Okay, as we've heard tonight in our headlines, the fight for the Labor leadership is heating up, with Shadow Treasurer Chris Bowen throwing his hat in the ring despite a lot of internal party concerns. It was his commentary during the campaign that tanked Labor's vote on Saturday. Now, notwithstanding his responsibility for the policies in the first place, let's see what happens with that race. Now, on the government side, the Prime Minister was back at work, meeting with the Reserve Bank as he hopes to get his tax cuts delivered in the upcoming financial year. Sky News political reporter Annalise Nielsen joins us live from Parliament House. Annalise, big movements in the share market yesterday. Scott Morrison allowing no sense of hubris and a pretty fair warning, I think, from the RBA head today, and I'll get into that detail a little bit later, that we are going to face some economic headwinds, and the Prime Minister's doing his best to give the impression that the government has got over their win on the weekend and is now back to work and focused on the people.
That absolutely is a big focus for Scott Morrison going forward, because they're at the same time accusing the Labor campaign of getting ahead of themselves, so they're not going to want to be appearing like they've got ahead of themselves either. But it was interesting, this intervention from the RBA today. It's hard to think of another time that the RBA governor has flagged the potential for an interest rate cut this early out, 2 weeks out, and there was some speculation that this was going to happen at the last meeting, but it didn't happen in the lead up to the election. There was some speculation at the time that that was because they didn't want it to be an impact on the election result. But we've seen in 2 previous elections there have been interest rate changes in the lead up to the polls, but that wasn't off the back of such a long period of inaction. So it does seem like the RBA is giving him fair warning that this will happen. In particular, in this speech, the RBA governor has flagged that it is due to that unemployment rate. He thinks that it can go below 5% and an interest rate cut could help that. He's also previously spoken about wage stagnation, and this could be another move to try and get wages up as well. And that was also flagged in his speech today.
Now, for people at home who don't often read the RBA chief's speeches, I'm going to put it up on my Facebook page because there's a lot of coded language. Economists are generally very, very careful, but it is about as much a warning as you can get about where Australia's economy is headed. And I have to tell you, when I read his speech, I kept thinking what would have been the case if Labor had won on the weekend and a lot of that housing policy was about to hit, and obviously money coming out of the pockets of self-funded retirees. So I think it would have been even more alarming. Labor's leadership, I'm surprised after everyone around the traps that I spoke to blaming a lot of the economic policies on Chris Bowen, that he's put his hand up to run in this Labor leadership contest against Anthony Albanese.
It is a remarkable move because he is attached to the more controversial policies that came out in the election. He's the one that famously told people, well, don't vote Labor if you are against changes to franking credits. And it seems like from their perspective, a lot of people didn't. So, but he was playing that down today. He was saying that he knows it was a bold policy, but he didn't think it cost them that many votes. You have to remember with this process, to pick a new Labor leader, it's a long process. Once they've declared all the candidates, it'll be about another month before it goes through that process of the postal votes from the members, and then the party room has its say as well. So it does seem like this is the early days of getting through what went wrong. There's still that shock factor among the Labor ranks about the result on Saturday, and they still haven't really come to terms with it. So to have Anthony Albanese up against Chris Bowen, they were the obvious contenders from the left and right faction, but it does seem like this might filter through to some other candidates putting their hand up. Jim Chalmers is still being put forward as a name potentially to put his hand up. He's a Labor MP from Queensland, which was where we know they took such a hit at the polls. So he's seen as a very palatable option, a fresh, young option for the party when they are looking for a reset, but also green on the other side. And so there is some understanding that he was considering and maybe has taken a step back since Chris Bowen's put his hand up, but there's a long way to go. There still could be a lot of internal jostling, especially with Tanya Plibersek ruling herself out. There's any chance there'll be more than 2 people putting their hands up by the end of this.
Yeah, look, I think Chris Bowen would be an absolute parliamentary gift every single day to remind people of the bullet they dodged. Annalise Nielsen, thanks very much for your time.